afternoon, and welcome to this week's Wednesday webinar, totally at a different time. I was just saying it feels like 6 o'clock, but it's only 3 Eastern time. So come on in, sit back, relax, grab you a afternoon cup of coffee, and we're going to have an awesome webinar today.
Coffee, not cap, no cocktails, huh?
No coffee? Oh, your drink of choice.
Sparkling water.
Very good. We're so glad that you've joined us today for this week's webinar on retirement, making sure that you have enough, that you're ready. And we have a subject matter expert today. We're so excited to have Michael with Fellows joining us. He is a financial advisor at Fellows. He has extensive experience in financial services. He's gonna give you guys lots of tips, lots of resources for this week's webinar. We also have Carrie, of course, Carrie Lazar, our expert content creator and manager in marketing. So we couldn't do this without Carrie. And Michael, welcome. We're so glad to have you. And go ahead and
Thanks,
take it
man.
away.
All right, let's get the show on the road. So thank you, everybody. Again, Kim and Carrie, thank you for the having me here. At Fellows, we're always happy to be here, and we're really excited, about our existing partnership with the credit union and, really working with the members. And so, today we're going to talk about de-risking your retirement a little bit. And there's a lot of ways to do it. And, I figured I'd start off with, a little bit of a story. But before we do that, some housekeeping stuff. So there's a Q&A box in Zoom that you can put questions in. We won't be answering them till the end of the seminar, but please feel free to put them in as they come up. If there's something more urgent, the webinar chat is being monitored by Carrie and Kim, so you can always access that. So today, I figured, it'd be good to start off with a little story about, de-risking your retirement and, just if you don't, what are maybe some of the pitfalls? And so I think back of, a personal story with my grandparents, and it was back in '01. We had the dot-com bubble bust, and they had their investments, middle class couple, raised five kids in a 3-bedroom house, and they had their investments and everything in the market, and they were getting closer to retirement in '01, and the '01 crash came, and they lost a decent amount, right? It was almost a 40% pullback, in the '01 era, when it crashed. And so, what did they do? They let their emotion grab control, and they exited the market. They sold everything in the market. And that's a very actually common thing that you see with people who don't have the right advice, don't have the right positioning of their assets. And to this day, my grandmother's still alive at 94. They're suffering from that, from not having their assets allocated in different ways to make sure that they didn't have the risk that they did in fact take by keeping their assets all in the market in '01, and the diversification wasn't there either. So this topic is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's a critical stage of kind of what is going to happen. Can only retire once. So for today, we're going to go through some slides. We're going to go through some information. There's going to be opportunity for Q&A at the end. If it's more of a personal situation, we're happy to take those offline, schedule time. We've got a calendar link on the United States Senate Federal Credit Union, which goes directly to my schedule. So today is about educating you and giving you some more information to help you guys be more successful or seek out the advice that's necessary to make you feel better, more confident about your retirement, knowing that your money's going to last as long as you do, right? Longevity risk, and you have the freedom, to choose what you want to do in your life versus being handicapped to maybe a poor decision that you could have prevented. So, when we work with people and when people come into our offices, a lot of people have a lot of the same questions, right? Do I have enough money put away? When can I retire? Can I stay retired? Is there a chance I might outlive my money? Will my family be taken care of? So for the past 20 years, we've been working with tens of hundreds of families to help them answer these questions with confidence. And so, we're going to get started today. And, we've got, a number of parts that we're going to run through that will be a little more generalized, but should be relevant to everybody. And then, we're going to obviously have an opportunity to learn more if you so desire. So we'll keep it going. So we've got this response form. We'll put it up at the end of our talk today. It's just a little bit about did you feel valuable, in regards to the content, the effectiveness of the presentation, but also, hey, were the retirement concerns, that we addressed today, would you like to address them further, explore, ignore them? And then there's a QR code that goes right to scheduling a meeting as well. So, at Fellows, we do more than financial planning. We're kind of the quarterback to your life. And, that is important because there's a lot of different aspects, CPAs, life insurance, investments, estate planning, so we take the approach of being a unique fiduciary to make the personal planning personal. It's not just a plan. It's your personal plan based on your personal goals. And we've got success that we've done it, throughout the years. We've been awarded Barron's top 100 RIA firms. Same thing with Forbes. We have proprietary information and patents on our planning process that help people be successful and avoid some of these risks that we're going to talk about today. So there's three areas of risk primarily. There's more, but today we're going to talk about these three. And the first one is about not having enough income to last throughout the rest of your life. And so, we're going to talk about how we can address that risk with guaranteed income plan so that you never really outlive your money. The second thing we're going to discuss is the risk of the market and our current economy. We're going to discuss how do we make sure that the money you've saved and the lifestyle that you expect in retirement is protected, even if the stock market drops, geopolitical things, right? We want some protection built in, right? There's a lot of risks out there. And then third, how to make sure that you're not paying too much in taxes, both today and also when you retire, right? Because we've got obviously a large debt from a country status. We have a significant tax base. The question is, and always has been, right? How do we tax people? Are we taxing them enough? Are we taxing them too little? Well, whichever way you decide, you feel, the point is we've got a giant fiscal debt and we're going to need to raise income to pay that off or reduce spending. One of those two, right? It's a teeter-totter. And, unfortunately, it's just where we are. So how do we as individuals, though, if taxes are going up, how do we make sure we protect ourselves and, we pay our fair share, but we don't want to pay over our fair share, so to speak, right? So we want to make sure that we're keeping the most of that hard-earned income that you're going to work or you're starting your business for. So the first section that we're going to talk about is income, right? And, without question, the most common worry, something that we hear from people to coming into our office is our money going to run out? Are we going to have money that's going to last the rest of our lives? What if we live to 95? What if we live to 103? What are we going to do? And so really what these individuals are asking us is, are we going to be okay? Right? If we were in a room together, I'd ask everybody to raise their hand, but how many of you guys, that are in this, presentation right now feel like they're going to be okay for income in retirement? And then my next question really is, do you want to just feel okay about income, or do you want to feel confident, secure about that answer? Like, raise your hand proud, that's what we're trying to get you to. So, we spend so much time, of our life working, paycheck coming in every 2 weeks or every month, and it's a good thing, right? Because we all have expenses, our house, our car, our food, everything costs money. But when we hit retirement, most of the time these paychecks stop, but these expenses don't go away. And, there's a lot of people that are just like, well, I'm just going to have to deal with less income, but it doesn't necessarily have to be true. Proper planning ahead of time and having your money in different buckets and diversified can really help you have that income streams continue in a very efficient manner. So, yes, some expenses are going to go down in retirement. Clothes, maybe that you're not wearing a suit anymore, suit and tie. Maybe the food's going down. Maybe you move to a place where you don't need two cars, you only need one. But many people overestimate the reduction in expenses that they have when they retire. And actually, the first few years, studies have shown that you actually have more spending than your last few years of working, because you want to, they're called the go-go years. You want to go do something. You want to go be somewhere. You want to be with people. You want the experiences, more time for fun, more time to eat out, all of those things. So the likelihood of income actually going down is actually pretty slim. So we used to have this thing with, this three-legged stool. And it's a three-legged stool, for retirement planning, or, income planning. And, maybe more, it's really probably more appropriate that we talk about what this stool used to be, right? The title of the slide is The Three-Legged Stool Was. And the first leg of the stool, right? Pensions. Well, we used to have pensions, when a lot of our parents retired, maybe from a company they worked for 30 or 40 years, many of them had pensions. Pensions were really nothing more than a monthly check that they received from their employer for the rest of their lives. Next, your parents had Social Security. Well, how long were their pensions designed to last for? Well, for life. How long was Social Security intended to make payments for them? Also the rest of their lives. And then, for people that, had those first two, they normally had some personal savings, and they accrued that third leg of the retirement income stool, and could literally be for money, that they saved up over the years in various investments, made to cover up things that the first two legs, your pension, Social Security, maybe didn't add up to enough, right? So it was the supplement. But, that idea was to have at least two legs of that stool considered 100% predictable and reliable and timely, the pension leg and the Social Security leg. And just one of those was the responsibility of you. But that's changed over time. Today, very few companies have pensions. Today, they often are less rich, right? So they have lower values in the pension benefits. They also have a majority of retirees have retirement plans that are dependent on them, no longer the company, largely. And then the other thing is, most people don't work for the same company for 20 to 30 years. So then we look at Social Security. Well, Social Security is next, right? So today, there's a lot of people that are a little worried about Social Security. You know, most people, if I took a poll right now, um, would you say you feel better about Social Security or weaker, right? Or less, you know, is Social Security really in a better spot? Most people will say no. And that's not where we wanted it, right? Now, none of us know exactly what's going to happen with Social Security. And yes, Social Security technically in the next 4 years will need to be shored up. Otherwise, benefits will need to be reduced to a degree. So there is some urgency around that, and hopefully, we get that solution. But Social Security is a little unstable right now, and we've got an option, to really then look at us as the personal savings, right? So a lot more weight that used to be balanced across three legs is really based on 1.5, 1.75 legs, right? So we no longer have that income, right? And so, when we look at where are we getting our income, that dynamic has changed. And it's changed maybe not necessarily for the better, but there's definitely more personal responsibility on you than there was from the previous generation. So, I talked to, a lot of different people, and, some people come to these, types of events that we're doing right here. And, at the end, of the event, they say they're interested in meeting, and 2 days later, they'll come into the office and we'll sit down and, we'll have a good conversation. And, at one of them, I was talking to, and he's like, hey, he's like, my biggest concern. He's like, Michael, he's like, I'm worried that we're behind. We didn't get the best jump on things. I'm worried we're going to run out of money or retire. When I asked him to explain a little bit more about his situation, Roger goes, into 30 years of his career. He's had 3 different jobs. He's worked in a printing industry, small business for a while, another corporate job. And when he was about to retire after 19 years with his marketing company, um, you know, he had three separate retirement accounts. And then his wife, had some savings, bonds, a few stocks, a 401k, and so when I, asked him a follow-up question, is really of, hey, how did we get there? Right? Did you plan to have all these still out there? Did we plan to not have them, in different areas, right? So what we came to kind of a conclusion was, his assets were really along the lines of kind of a junk drawer, right? And this junk drawer, they had assets everywhere, right? They had 3 different retirement plans. They had a different savings account. They had 3 other banks. They had another investment account. And, it kind of, you don't plan for your drawer in your kitchen. Mine is, in the end of the island in the right. You just don't plan for that. But it kind of happens. I don't know how many people don't have a junk drawer. And, the clients kind of laughed when we talked about the junk drawer because it really just showed that they didn't have a plan or they lacked having a plan. And they thought it was too complicated to get things together in retirement, that it was complex to, roll things over and things of that nature. So the first piece is like, you got to start somewhere. And part of that is organizing and getting things ready for retirement. And when you have complexity, that creates uncertainty. And nobody likes the feeling of uncertainty. And, look, you want to be confident about retirement. And they didn't at this point, right? If we're using the junk drawer analogy, feel confident about where their income was coming from because they had things all over the place and they didn't have a plan. And so what we needed to do was create a written income plan. And, we're not just talking about a collection of retirement income sources that you can tap into. We're talking about a real tailored plan, that lays out exactly the sources of income that's going to be tapped into, exactly in what order, for what periods of time that certain accounts are going to be used for to maintain the lifestyle. What happens if certain income streams are disrupted? So if you haven't had this type of detailed written income plan put in place, you're not alone. A lot of people haven't. Actually, in reality, 80 to 85% of people surveyed don't have a plan like this. And if you don't do anything else after this seminar, it would be to put together your own plan. At the very least, if you don't want to seek out additional professional help or professional advice, and create your own written income plan. You will feel more confident about your financial future at the very least. However, we, of course, strongly recommend you ask a professional. So, having a written plan that lays out your income is critical. And sometimes we'll get people that, will say, well, look, I don't really need my income plan. I've got my assets and I'm going to do the 4% rule. And so we look at that. And so what about that 4% rule? Just trying to advance. So, the 4% rule is, conventional wisdom, right? So many financial advisors, will talk about this rule, and, it's not necessarily locking, it's not concrete. Let me just say that. There's many studies that have shown that the 4% rule is actually a little too generous. And that doesn't make you sound so good. And so when we do the math, and the new 4% rule is really about 3.8%. And that's not really where we want to be. And even when we look at 3.8, that's not even a hard and fast rule, because it depends on your income needs. It depends on your spending. It depends on the investment makeup. It depends on the market overall. A lot of those things we can't control. Some of them we can, but a lot of them we can't. We might go through a recession of the 3 years, and so we have 3 down years right in a row. Unlikely, but it does happen, and it has happened. So you can't always connect, and start, thinking about the 4% rule that it's hard and fast, right? Could it be a rule of thumb? Sure, but I wouldn't rely on that to judge your success. So let's talk about just kind of some easy math. If you had $1 million and we wanted to figure out a safe, what would be considered safe spending percentage each year, we can look at, let's look at 2%. Okay. So 2% is 20,000, 3%, 30,000, so I don't know about you, but if you had $1 million sitting in investments, and that's what you are going to base your retirement on, and you live in the DC metro area, what would I tell you, or what would you be feeling? Not very exciting. That's what I would think you would say. Now, the good news is, with retirement income planning, you're not necessarily limited to a 2 or a 3 or a 4%. You can get higher cash flows and take less risk. So many times you can even get, 5, 6%, depending on your circumstances, your age. So that's one of the reasons it's critical you sit down with somebody who knows how to put a true retirement plan together, and really drive into what accounts are going to do what purpose in retirement for you. So that's all I wanted to say about kind of our first topic of about outliving money. So the next part we're going to talk is our second topic, and it's going to be about risk. And, risk, there's a lot of different ways of, that you can look at risk. Keeping your assets protected, even if the market should drop. Every day we are protecting against risk, right? Why do we have car insurance? Protecting against risk. Why do we have homeowners insurance? Protecting against risk. Why do we have life insurance? Protecting against risk. Why don't we have market insurance? Do we? Well, there are some things out there, but we got to take into account our full retirement picture. So volatility, right? I hear that a lot. It's been pretty volatile out there, whether we're talking about global pandemic we came through, domestic politics, geopolitical politics, protests, unrest, people's reactions to social media posts that have gone viral. We're in the middle of a ton of things that can impact the market and the financial world. And, a lot of people would say this is probably some of the most turbulent times we've seen in recent history. So what does that mean? I can't solve the social part of it, but we can look at the financial part. And it simply means with so many different things that are happening so fast, the stock market can go up significantly, up and down, much like a roller coaster. Over time, the backbone of the economy shows through, but that might take a year to correct. It might take a few months. It might take a few days. A few weeks ago, we had over a 600-point drop in the market on a Monday. By the end of the week, we were up. It was like it never happened. But if you were concerned about Monday and sold, well, how did you pick when you wanted to get back in? Or are you even back in? So that is all about risk and what it really means to you and your financial plan. And one of the questions we get a lot is like, will a drop in the market really change our day-to-day existence in retirement? Right? So we're talking about, well, how much volatility can we absorb, right? So it's a pretty good question. So we're going to talk about two things. So risk tolerance and what I call the danger zone or the retirement danger zone. So, here's an example of, just kind of a couple, Tom and Eileen, we're at, a presentation like this. And at the end, Eileen was nudging Tom about signing up and having a second conversation. And truth be told, I'm not so sure he thought that they needed to come in and, even see us. But, you never know, you never underestimate the power of persuasion, especially your wife. And so they came in and they visited us. And, a few days later, we were talking and they had saved, over $700,000 in retirement and various accounts, 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, and they were talking about, their lives and some of the grandkids and, some of their, goals of spending time with them, and after Tom retired. And so we asked them, given your goals and how much money you're comfortable having and, how much money are you comfortable having in the market? And they paused and Tom was 64, Eileen 63. They've been married a long time. And, Tom was, really just looking at, and he's like, 10%. He's like, how much would we risk? 10%, 10% would be it. And Eileen, really kind of was surprised at that. And, she joked back and said what he meant to say was $10. So what this story just kind of illustrates is they were a conservative investor. Tom was very conservative. He did not want to risk all the money that they had saved for retirement now that they were approaching and he was about to retire. That's one side of it, right? The other side of it is really just on, well, can you be super aggressive? And there's some volatility, right? So why would you want to be super aggressive? Why would you want to be super conservative? Maybe you need to be a little bit of both, right? So, if we look at the market, right, here's just a quick chart of the S&P, and the end of the bull market, was 10-year end of the bull market, and the beginning of the stock market crash of 2020 as coronavirus rocked the world, right? And a few days later, officials deemed by the pandemic, which March 9th, 2020, marked the Dow Jones largest single point plunge up to that point. Then it experienced two more record drops on March 12th and March 16th of 2020. So the good news is these historic drops were followed by amazing rebounds, right? I talked about my grandparents earlier. After bottoming out in March 23rd of 2020, the stock market actually ended 2020 better than it actually started, with a new record. And so let's look a little bit at the history of bull markets and bear markets. So take a look at the chart with me for a second. We know that a bull market is when a market is on the rise, and a bear market is when it's on the decline. And a correction is considered and defined as a drop of 10% or more in the following from a previous upswing. But everybody understands that the market long-term goes up and down, rises and falls. Corrections are absolutely cyclical, meaning they're not predictable, which means they're going to occur. When we'll have one, and we'll probably have once in a life occurrences like pandemics, depressions, right? Otherwise, everybody would be rich and there would be no cycle. It would just be going up. So if you look at, just recently in the market, and let's look, we had that great drop, from the 2008 drop, and then we have gone and continued up. Then we had pandemic right there, and we've gone up. We had a retrenchment, and then we're at all-time highs right now. So what we need to understand is the volatility that goes hand in hand with the market, but that volatility is stressful to an income that is reliant on the market results. So we're going to go through a scenario with Ted in June. So let's take a look at Ted and June. They retired 1 year apart from their consulting business. And it was just 1 year apart, not a big deal. What's often overlooked is the first few years, especially the first year, but the first few years of what could be happening with the market. What is that combined effect, right? When we have an impact of a negative year in the market up front, when you just retire, that impact is very meaningful to how long their savings may last for retirement. So we're going to run through a little bit of a scenario. Both of these individuals have started with the same amount of money. They had the same overall investment returns and withdrew the same amount of money to live on each year. Come on. There we go. As you can see, we've got Ted, who, encountered a sharp market downturn early in retirement. The first year he retired, it was in 2002, excuse me, 22% down. Every year after that, we've had some good performance and bad performance. What he did was he took a 5% annual withdrawal starting in 2002. 3 years into the retirement, in 2004, his value was $233. 11 years into retirement, his $250,000 investment had declined to $200,000. His ability to continue to withdraw that $12,500 for the 30 years, which is based on his longevity, is in jeopardy. Now let's look at June. So June retired at the end of 2002 and started taking the 5% withdrawals, just the same as Ted. 3 years into retirement, because she waited and didn't start in a negative year, her value 1 year later was 2005 was $333,000. 11 years later, the power, taking the same amount of money, roughly the same investment returns other than that first year, her investment had grown to $430,000. So we're comparing $200,000 to $430,000 based on really 1 year difference of when you decide to retire. that's why it's critical as you get into these years of, we call it the retirement danger zone. And it's really within the first 10 years before retiring and the first 10 years after. And if you really wanted to shrink that down, the first 5 and the last 5. So if you're investing the same way that you were when you were younger, from your first job at 18 to 21 up to, 55, and you want to retire at 59, maybe you should be having a conversation about changing how you're going about that. It's not the same, and it takes a long time to recover, right? That's called a sequence of return risk that we just talked about. And, that is a critical period of being successful in retirement, given your longevity. And people are going to keep living longer today. And, with the advances in medical care and things of that nature, those 10 years before and after are really critical. And so having the proper diversification, having an income plan is really important to make sure that you can deal with the volatility that we just saw, in the chart from the S&P. You've got a lot at stake, as you get closer to retirement, and you only get one chance of this. And so there's a lot of different strategies that you're going to want to do, throughout, leading up to and preparing, and then right after you actually choose to retire. Great. So that's all I'm going to say about taxes, about risk and keeping your assets protected for right now. The next thing we're going to talk about is taxes. And we all have, every year, we get the dreaded, April 15th, we gotta pay taxes, right? Or we have to at least submit our tax returns to hopefully maybe get a return. Nobody likes taxes, but they're a critically important thing to keep our government working and give us the services that we need to do. However, taxes can be a huge impact on your money and how much money you actually have to live on and when you retire, right? There's a lot of things that you need to think of when you're talking about taxes in retirement. There's Social Security that's going to get taxed. There's IRAs that could be taxed. There's 401ks that could be taxed. Maybe you have a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA that maybe doesn't need to do tax, but you didn't start those, too early. Maybe you have a taxable investment account, will get taxed as you used it, as you sell the gains. So what I'm telling you is, in retirement, taxes become even more important to be cognizant of, because, really you've saved your whole life, and, you could look at, hey, I saved $155,000 on taxes throughout my life, but you're going to be paying over $1 million, right? So how does that happen, right? So, everybody goes through life, and, this chart that I'm going to put up, I wouldn't get focused on all the numbers, but there's a few key numbers, right? So at 35, you start putting, some money away, and you put $5,000 in, and you put that $5,000 into 65, and it grows at a rate of 7% every year. You've got an account value of roughly $530,000. You then retire at 66, and you don't put any more contributions in, and then you don't need it till 73. Well, now RMDs kick in because of the Secure Act 2.0, and that withdrawal percentage is highlighted in red, and you're still earning about 5%. So you change your investment makeup, you're making less on an average earnings rate from 7 to 5. And throughout the years till 85, you've taken out about 486,000. Well, your account value is still 758,000 if all this math works, which means you've already been taxed on 468. You've got another 758 that you're going to be taxed, which is a total of almost $1.1 million. So that $155,000 savings that you guys saved or that this client hypothetically saved, from 35 to 65 has turned into basically $1 million that he's grown it to, but that he's going to be paying taxes on. So the point is, when you think about what you want to do and how you are putting different assets in different vehicles or different strategies, you really want a full financial plan that helps look at the different types of assets you have, the different buckets, the different tax treatments that you have. How are they going to create income? What's the risk that's going to come to that? And, really understand how taxes are going to impact this income that's going to be coming to you. Sometimes people don't even need the income, but at 73, the income has to start coming. So there's specific strategies about how to maybe minimize the taxes that are coming from your required minimum distributions through charity, through giving them away to alma maters, to creating other avenues to offset that required minimum distribution tax that's going to be paid on over time. So, when, you work with an advisor, any advisor, we would hope that you would get a written goal-based financial plan that's based on income, that's based on, lifestyle, that's based on any legacy desires that you want to do. And we would look that, that you come away with that, as something that's tangible that you can take with you, but also that you revisit. It's not something that you take and you go put in that junk drawer that we talked about earlier. It's something that you're going to look at and review, not on an everyday basis, but on an annual basis at minimum. And you also, in this plan, should have, your risk tolerance kind of mapped out, and you should be able to understand where your portfolios stand to where you feel your risk tolerance is. And then the other thing is, where's your taxes, right? Where's your tax liability? Where could it come from? Are you selling a home? Are you selling an investment property? Are you selling taxable accounts? Is it just RMDs? Hey, I'm a small business owner and I'm selling something, or I'm a high W-2 earner. How do I reduce my taxes? We've accumulated a huge amount of savings, which is great. We did a great job, but now we're getting destroyed in taxes, right? So having a plan around tax reduction is important and should be included in this in a plan. So there's three really, critical things that you should always consider, when you're looking at, if you're going to get advice, professional advice, right? So is your story, right? Do you want, your story to be told, right? And make sure that whoever you're telling to, understands what's important to you. So 2 would be, making sure those people can help, right? Are they fiduciaries? Are they partnered with the right providers that can provide holistic solutions that put you at the center? And then 3rd is really just, if you want, our help, their help, right? You need to decide if you want to get help for your financial advice. There's no shame in going alone, but there are people, who do this day in and day out that have insights, that have experiences working with other clients that really will help put more confidence and honestly just relieve anxiety that we find that we see with a lot of clients when they don't have any of those things. So, in summary, right, we want to make sure that you are looking at your income sources to help ensure that you have enough income. Are those income sources going to prove the test of time? Are they going to prove through volatility in the market? Are they going to prove through geopolitical events? Are they secure? Are there any guarantees attached to them? Things of that nature. The other thing we want to is, well, what do I need to do to protect yourself from unnecessary risk? We talked about the sequence of return risk in regards to, the first 5 to 10 years ahead of retirement and the next 5 to 10 after retirement. The first five, I would say, of before retirement and after retirement are extremely critical. But I'd say the first 10 on both sides is where you really start doing the planning and implementing some of those strategies and tactics that you've been talking about, because you're not going to invest the same way that you invested to accumulate throughout to get up to retirement. And the third is really help reduce the effects of taxes. You got to look at what Social Security is going to do, what your required minimum distribution is going to do, how is your pension going to affect, is there any inheritance coming in? Do you want to leave a legacy? What's the most efficient way from a tax perspective to do that? These are all things that are critically important to help you be successful in retirement, making sure you have enough retirement, making sure that you're not putting, too much away and then getting taxed, so bad that, it's like, well, was that even worth it? And so, I appreciate your time today. I think we went through a lot of things. There's some Q&As in there. I'm happy to answer any questions that are out there. Again, we appreciate your time. And Carrie, Kim, I would hand it back to you, and we can go through a Q&A and go through any chats as well.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was awesome. Very good information. Great tips, great resources. We truly appreciate you and all that you do for our members here at the credit union. Let me see if we do have just a comment. Three-legged stool, with many in the credit union members being federal employees or retirees, we do still have a pension, less under FERS than CSRS, but the benefit is still there. That is just awesome. You're so fortunate to have that.
Absolutely. And that is, I'm probably preaching to the choir in regards to pensions there. But not everybody, is in that position. Maybe they had federal government experience and moved on and didn't have enough years. But, having FERS or CSRS is a tremendous benefit. I don't think that's going away anytime soon, at least FERS. But it has changed. The point of it becoming less valuable, I would still say it's very valuable, but it's not as lucrative as it first was. That's why there was a change from CSRS. That's why there was a change in the variations of FERS that are out there. So it is still a benefit. It is still there, which is awesome. And hopefully it never changes. But it is, benefits can change.
Thank you so much, Michael. So someone wants to know if you can please clarify how the 486,858 is added with remaining 758,000 to mean someone is taxed on income of 1 million when the person hasn't yet sold, withdrawn the remaining 758,000. Is this taxing considered unrealized gains, or is it two different taxes, capital gains on what was withdrawn plus investment income such as dividends that are taxable?
Yeah, sure. So that one was the remaining dollars in the account, 758,000. It just hasn't been taxed yet. It will get taxed. So if you pass away and you still have that money, that will get passed to your heirs. Well, Secure Act 2.0 says that money all gets taxed no matter what, and it's required to be taxed within 10 years. So that 758 will get passed on to your kids, or maybe, we'll just say your kids. Say you pass on in your 80s and you didn't, in that chart, it was at 85. Well, at 85, you pass away and 758,000 goes to your kids. Well, your kids most likely are in or approaching their peak earning years in their late 40s or early 50s. And so they're going to be in their peak years, which means they're probably in their peak tax period as well. So that 758 is required to come out by law from the Secure Act 2.0 in the next 10 years of your passing. And so each year, 80 some thousand of that will have to come out and be taxed. So that full 758 would actually probably turn into a larger number because you're still invested, but you're going to be paying taxes on that no matter what till it fully gets out of that IRA.
Thank you so much. Great question. That is all the questions we have. I just want to do a shout out. We have two credit union employees who joined us today, Gretchen and Stephanie. Want to thank them so much for joining us as well. You see Michael's phone number, his email, the website on the slide presentation in front of you. If you have questions, if you need to reach out to him, feel free to call us. If you're not able to get directly to him, you can call the 202-224-2967 number. If you choose option 7, you can always say my name, which is Kim Fridley, and it'll come directly to me. And we just had another question pop up, Michael. This one is, can you transfer it from the inherited IRA to the heir's own IRA to avoid the 10-year issue?
No, so that was taken away. So Secure Act 2.0, everybody talks about the good thing. Hey, we can delay distributions till 73, but they took away being able to transfer that into your own IRA. Spouses are about the only ones that can do that from spouse to spouse. But if it goes spouse to child, no, it can't work. It goes into an inherited, they would get an inherited IRA. It stays an inherited IRA, and they have to liquidate it by 1/10 every 5 year, and then it's gone in 10 years.
Again, thank you. That is all the questions we have. Again, thank you for spending the afternoon, a little bit of your afternoon with us. Typically, these webinars are at 6 o'clock. So we had a time change today, and we had a lot of you join us. So we're so excited to have such an outpouring of guests today to hear Michael from Fellows. Carrie, do you have anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I'll just say that after the webinar, I'll go ahead and email everybody Michael's contact info, a link to his calendar and website. So you'll have that. And thank you all for coming.